Hi, group members. This would be the second post of this week. I'm not sure how we're supposed to do this, but I think I'm supposed to give a response to your post. So thank you all three of you for responding, and thank you Tyler and Holly especially for your nice compliments. Being the first one to do this always makes it a little tough because you really don't have an example for what you're supposed to be doing. So it's good to know that I provided some fodder for discussion for you and that you found the discussion interesting. So to respond directly to what some of you were talking about, I'll just go down the line. Katie posted first, so I'll respond to Katie and then to Tyler and then to Holly in order of the way you guys posted. Katie, I was a little concerned that you might have misunderstood my post and that I was asserting some claims when really I was just exploring some things. In no way was my original post meant to suggest that I see all female leaders as bitchy, or that I even suggest that that is how I see most female leaders. In the post, I said that Dr. York had mentioned this in class, and I have noticed that people tend to refer to strong female leaders as bitchy. In my experience, I have had some female supervisors and female leaders in front of me that are extremely good leaders. They don't come across as bitchy. They come across as very nurturing and very willing to help and jump in any way to do what needs to be done. But I was simply positing that theory as to, why is it that a woman can't lead in the same manner as a man without being seen in a light such as that she's bitchy or that she's domineering, the type of negative connotative words that we associate with powerful and strong women. You also said that I said women and men lead differently. What I actually said was that many times they lead differently, and that when they lead differently, usually those differences are seen. When they lead the same is when I think it lends itself to a woman being labeled as domineering or non-nurturing. So I don't necessarily think they always lead differently, but I think it works out better for the female that does lead differently. But I think that sometimes when we try to lead as women and have that nurturing role and that kind of mothering instinct, we're seen as weaker or not quite as on top of our game, things like that. Now that's a gross generalization. That's not to say that all women come across that way. And I think it very much depends not just on the woman and how she comes across, but on the people that she's leading and the people that are in power over her and how they view her leadership and whether or not she's strong and whether or not she gets things accomplished. So there are a lot of factors involved in that, but in no way did I mean to suggest that all women in power come across as bitchy or domineering, because I don't think that's true. As a matter of fact, I have several examples of very strong women who lead with quite a bit of authority, but still come across very nurturing and very loving and very concerned about their people. So that was not at all what I meant to say. Myself, I'm obviously a female, and I like to think of myself as a campus leader. I like to think of myself as somebody that people come to if they need something, and I don't think that I come across that way. I think that I come across very helpful and very willing to do whatever it takes to get what you need accomplished. I have very rarely been accused of being bitchy. I have had people call me that. I was an 8th grade teacher for 9 years, so it happens. It comes with the territory. But I think on the whole, people see me as helpful and attentive to what I do and things like that. So, and I hope that's true, because I think that's the kind of thing that people notice and that gets you into those leadership roles and lets you work within that. Tyler, you mentioned stereotypes, and you mentioned that the female administrators that acted like men or like their male counterparts. And you said that they come off bitchy sometimes, but it was more the way they said things or the way they came off, and that there were some that were friendly and genuine. It's interesting to me that you used the word genuine. There's a personal story associated with one of my sons about that particular word, referring to people in helping professions and teacher professions, things like that. So it was very interesting that you use that word, just to me personally. You talked about women putting forth more effort to be held in the same regard as men, and I think that's very much still true today. And I hate to say that I'm not what I would call a blazing feminist or anything, but I do think that even just in my workplace, I work much harder than some of the men that I see on campus working. And I feel like I have something to prove all the time. And I think that a lot of women foster that kind of bias in their work. They think that they still have something to prove. Whereas I don't think men feel the pressure. Men do have something to prove, but I think they don't feel the pressure of that so much in the professional world, because they're just immediately kind of given that air of authority or air of expertise. People don't look at them and question whether they actually know what they say they know. Whereas that tends to happen, I think, to women in the field. There's a particular male that I work with that has been here quite a bit less time than I have, and there were a couple instances when he first started working here where he would take it upon himself to call himself reprimanding me for something, and it took me really getting upset and having to say, look, I've been here, I've been doing my job, I've been doing it well. I don't need you to tell me how to do things. For him to even notice that he was doing that and that he was stepping out of bounds. So I think sometimes men just are so used to that way of things happening that they don't even realize that it is a difference in the way that people are treated. And I don't know that it's just a male-female dichotomy. There may be some other form of dichotomy, such as higher degrees, which in higher education we value quite a bit. But so moving on to the next part, we talked about the research that I read that said women are better leaders. To clarify what it was talking about, it said that women are more apt to affect change in their working environments. They're more apt to include stakeholders for buy-in. These types of activities, it didn't surprise me that women are seen as doing those kind of things in leadership roles, because the nurturing side of us would be more prone to asking people what they think and asking what their opinion is, and garnering buy-in, because change is hard and women understand that. And I think it goes to personality, and again, we're talking about gross generalizations. All men are not created equal and all women are not created equal, but for the most part, men are seen as problem solvers. So when something needs to be done, when something needs to be changed in a work environment, I think a man would approach it from the standpoint of, here's the problem, here's what we can do to fix it, okay, let's put it in action. Whereas a woman might approach it from the standpoint of, how is this going to affect the people that I work with every day? While it may solve the problem efficiently, if people don't understand how it's happening or why it's happening, I'm going to have a hard time getting people to buy into it and getting people to follow. So women are more prone to affect buy-in because it makes change a little bit easier on their constituents. And again, I'm always very careful when I start speaking in terms like this, because when you use gross generalizations, you're always going to have that one or two examples of people that don't fit that mold and are not the same type of operator. So anyway, the last thing is to respond to Holly. And Holly, I appreciate that you gave your experience with both male and female. I think that you are absolutely right that your experience through the female supervisor who answered all your questions and gave you the training that you needed and followed up with you, etc., is definitely a much more nurturing environment. Some people may see that as overbearing or micromanagement, but I think in some instances you just need to know that there's somebody there that if you have a question or if you feel uncomfortable about something, you can just go to them and say, look, I don't know how to do this, and not feel like you're in some way deficient because you haven't learned the job yet. And I really liked what you said about women giving up their nurturing nature to seem more strong, and how students may not respond to that. Approachability is definitely an important factor in student affairs, and if we're not approachable, then all the leadership in the world can go in the trash can for all the good it does, because if somebody doesn't approach you, you can't lead them. If someone doesn't feel like they can come to you, you're not going to know that they need help or that they need leadership. So then what good are your leadership skills without that? So I think that what you said about not losing your nurturing nature just to appear a stronger leader is very, very important. But anyway, that's pretty much handling everybody's post. I don't think I handled them quite as completely as you guys handled mine, but I hope that you get some satisfaction out of my response and you feel like the discussion was worthwhile. So, as always, if there's anything that I can do to help you, please let me know, and I'm signing off. Have a good night.